Hello and welcome to this walkthrough of the latest rules updates and FAQs and designer's commentary for Warhammer Underworlds. I'm not going to touch upon every update here, but I will go over the most important changes. And the first change is to reactions. It's not a huge one, but there is now an additional reaction window after resolving a ploy or a gambit spell. The second one I will touch upon is to search cards, and it's more of a quality of life change more than anything. You're now allowed to showcase your search card when you meet the condition rather than waiting until the next search step. So, for example, if you meet the conditions of a search card after resolving a ploy in the power step, you could show that card to your opponent instead of waiting till the end of the power step. It doesn't really change anything, you still don't get the glory earlier, you still don't get to draw a new objective earlier, but it just makes it less awkward, not having to sit around and wait for several interactions to finish, and possibly then forgetting to score the card before showing the actual card. That's a good thing in my book. Then we have some minor changes for a few cards from the Breakneck Slaughter, but I will not go over them here. But next thing I will touch upon though is the balance changes to a handful of warbands. And first up here are the Pandemonium and the Plot sequence have had a nerf. And it is perhaps more harsh on paper than in reality. The second and fourth part of the sequence is now in the hands of your opponents. You still get to decide who to inspire first up, but then the opponent gets to choose who to stagger, before you again have dominion over who to guard, and then at the end the opponent gets to choose who to push. This sounds really harsh, but it's mostly a problem I think in the first round. In the later rounds you probably only have 2 or 3 changes left anyway, and letting the opponent choose the stagger isn't major. But still, most definitely a power decrease obviously. For Flame Spooler there is basically only a clarification that his warping counter still damages opponents at the start of the round, even if he's no longer around. Let's move on to Domitan Stormcoven, and this is most definitely a nerf as well. Now you have to do the Harness the Aether reaction, so you can no longer charge in with an inspired fighter and stay tanky. You have to drop that Inspire off to another friendly fighter, obviously not an issue when you're the only guy left, but still makes it a bit less flexible in the earlier activations. But it's probably a balance change that was needed. The Domitans are very strong and a very meta-defining warband currently, so I'm welcoming this change. Then there are some rules clarifications for Scabbix and Headsman's Curse, but nothing really major. Then there is a slight buff to the Void Cursed Thralls rival deck to include Stun and Barge to the set of actions you can do. Nothing major, but still nice I guess. Then we have a change to the Sons of Velmorn, where Velmorn now gets a command counter as a reaction that started around for free, but if I remember correctly that change was already there. But there might have been a slight change in the timing of wording there, but I still don't think the Velmorn will be defining the meta anytime soon. Then we have a nice little buff for some Angry Girls from Nullwood. Griselles can now reduce the damage all the way down to 0 if they roll enough dodges, where previously the cap was at 1 damage incoming. Good stuff, they could probably use some survivability. And then there is a change in the wording for Tanglebriar from the Fearsome Fortress, but let's move on. Skittershank's Barb ability and the Exiled Dead had a bit of clarification as well, but that's not really major changes, so let's move on. Kagra's Ravagers, the 2 desecration tokens Inspire, is now hard-coded and not a beta rule anymore. And Kragan and Rasek's Despoil now happens immediately after the final power step of a round to clear out any misinterpretations on when it happens. Varklov, for the Thorns of the Bright Queen, can now choose to push 1 or more Chain Rasp instead of all Chain Rasps, which is pretty neat. That's about it for the rules updates. Let's check the FAQs. The first important one here clarifies that Sereni can't Hammer Tide if there are no opponents to hit with the action. Kind of a no-brainer really, but good to clear out so you can't cheese those 3 Riptides in a round to score that search objective all too easy. Jumping ahead here a bit, let's check the Freeze, Thaw Finish in Yara's Frozen Bonds questions here. If you place the block text, so it screws up your line of sight to the enemy you want to ping. After having placed said block text, you can't fulfill the condition for the card, because you have to choose the enemy fighter to ping or give a move token to, and if you can't see them, you can't ping them or you can't give them tokens. So that's, I believe, probably something that a lot of people haven't considered, and subsequently probably misplayed, so a good thing to keep in mind for sure. Next one is pretty interesting as well and holds true not only to this example, but several other upgrades also modifies your defense characteristic. If a fighter has the Armor of Ice upgrade and they are Void Cursed, what is that fighter's defense characteristic? So the answer here is both abilities set the characteristic of the fighter, so the modifier that most recently came into effect is the value used. So even if you are Void Cursed, if you get the Armor of Ice after you get Void Cursed, you still get the 2-block defense. Very good. It's in the rulebook, but I think it's probably something that a lot of people have missed probably. Next one has to do with the impetus mechanic from the Breakneck Slaughter. Question: a friendly fighter has 2 momentum counters and cannot be staggered. There are a variety of directions in which they could be pushed, the 2 hexes. They must be pushed to resolve the impetus ability, but there are also other directions that would result in them not being pushed. They are next to a blocked hex or an edge hex. Is my opponent obliged to place the scatter token in such a way so that the fighter is then pushed the full 2 hexes if possible? Yes, since the fighter cannot be staggered and the impetus ability must be resolved, this is the only way to fully resolve that. That's very interesting, and I also played it like this, but I think it's a very good thing to have clarified for sure. There are a couple of more questions regarding this specific arrival deck, but this one is probably the most important I will highlight here. You can check out the other ones for yourself, and I encourage you to indeed go and read through all of both the rules updates and the FAQs. There are a handful of more general questions that doesn't have to do with specific cards or fighter cards that you should definitely check out as well, but that's it for me tonight. Enjoy playing the game and Happy New Year! This is Mats again, chiming in to thank you for watching the video. Please don't forget to subscribe, like and comment, and to not miss out on future content, ring the bell as well. And if you really liked this video, feel free to click the thanks button just below this video. And if you want to support me even further, you can now become a channel member and claim the title of Critical Focus Fan. Until next time, take care, bye.